the Zig Zag Wanderer again, just walking around and thinking. Well, not really. My only thought of today was, I hate having a coat with missing buttons, It's like you buy the coat and the buttons just fall off. And I don't see anybody else with coats with missing buttons because they have zipper coats, And do you ever have a coat with missing buttons do you have buttons in your coat to spare? Do you have buttons in your coat to spare? You have a button coat though. No button coat. See, and it's so sad that nobody wants to give me the spare buttons off their coat so I can get this coat mended, Do you have buttons off your coat that you could spare? I mean, have you ever had a winter coat where all the buttons fall off and now I'm looking for buttons. I mean, that's all I want. I mean, do you have any buttons in your coat you could spare? I mean, look at your coat. It's got big buttons and I have a few missing. I mean, how do you keep them on? How do you keep them on?
They're not the same, you see.
They're not the same?
No,
but
so it's gonna look very bad.
Well, why don't they fall off? Mine fell off. How come yours never did?
Because every day I
reinforces it.
Really? Well, that's really a lot of work.
You should do the same.
I should. God, who knew having a coat with buttons was this much work? Do you have buttons in your coat you could spare?
What?
Buttons in your coat you could spare, because... No buttons. Do you have buttons in your coat you could spare? You have a zipper coat. I need buttons. You see, the buttons in my coat fell off, and I don't know what to do, and I'm depressed. Alright, thanks. See, this is a really sad dilemma. I'm stranded here with a coat that lacks buttons, and I can't seem to find buttons to spare. I wish... Are you ever in a dilemma where you have a coat with buttons and the buttons fall off and then you can't find them and then there's no coat? What do you do in a situation like that? Well, some people do nothing. See, what we have here is a shortage of button givers. Do you have a button coat? Do you have buttons to spare? I mean, no one has buttons to spare? Could life be that bad where no one has buttons to spare? Is this what the world has come down to? You have any buttons off your coat to spare? Do you have any buttons off your coat to spare? Well, what am I gonna do? I don't have any buttons in my coat. They don't want to give me any buttons, and I'm so depressed. I can't, I'm not asking for spare change. I'm not asking for donations, to the show. I'm not asking, anybody to buy the DVDs. I just want some buttons to spare. Do you have any buttons in the coat? Do you have, and that's all I want, and I'm not getting it. I'm not getting any buttons to spare. It's just what I call a really sad situation. There are just no buttons, and I guess I'm depressed. You see, you can actually be depressed by anything. Anything can depress you. Actually, wearing this leopard hat could depress me sometimes. Maybe that's why I'm not getting any buttons. It must be the hat. You remove something and you find out. Do you have any buttons in your coat to spare? Do you have any buttons in your coat to spare? Like some coats have buttons. No buttons. Okay. So, I mean, do you have any buttons in your coat to spare? Because my buttons fell out. Any buttons in your coat? No? Hey, I gotta tell you. I don't need the buttons. I don't want it anymore. Just forget it. I could live life without buttons. I mean, who needs buttons? When I've got a coat. When I'm warm. When I'm comfortable. And most of all, hey, I ain't no button beggar.